May the 11th, 2013. In part 4, we ended as the attack began on the Dulce base. And if you remember, it was Captain Mark Richards that had led the attack with the experimental X-22 helicopter. 5 miles behind him were the helicopters that were bringing in the troops and the backups. Now, as they were attacking the entrance, as the UFO came in, or the alien disc came in, they knew the timing and they had been tipped off about it. They came in, flew right in with the disc almost on top of it, and started firing. At the same time, troops were coming in from the transport tubes and the different water supply vents, air vents, things like that, as the main control room was taken over. Now, where we left off, it was Richards was seeing that the landing disc that he had followed in was trying to escape. Richards landed on the edge and kicked the props of the X-22 into a full downdraft, nearly flipping the disc. Then, fighting to regain control of the X-22, he was forced to make a hard landing on a nearby pad, sending 4 more rockets into the shuttle, forcing it to crash onto the 2-part triangle craft that were known to be fighter-type vehicles. As the men of the Cat-3 were now taking heavy weapons fire from a number of directions in the landing port, they had disabled the main weapons pod and the sonic systems for the whole facility, allowing the other teams to attack from the different directions and locations. Holographic image systems were shut off so that entry ports, air shafts, and other systems that were normally hidden now became fully exposed. An alien security team had managed to close the main doors into the central hub. Remember, we saw that door probably from the Cheyenne Mountain, the big security door. It says they had, at first, 2 men who attempted to get explosives close enough to damage the huge door were cut down by enemy fire. Taking heavy damage, the X-22 rolled forward and from less than 40 yards fired the remaining rockets. The resulting explosion blew the doors open and killed anybody on the other side for 100 feet. It says Mark Richards was forced to shut down the X-22 because the engines were overheating. Said he took command of one of the Cat-3's attack teams and led the attack through the still smoking entry into the main central hub. So other teams were attacking from the other directions. The multi-level facility at Dulce, with its central hub controlled by an extensive base security force, proved far more extensive and complex than the human attackers had been ready to cope with in the original plan. Said the guy that had tipped them off on the inside, Thomas Costello, had an Ultra 7 clearance, and that gave him clearance into the first 7 levels. When they got there, they found out it was much more. And I've read another report of this thing almost being an underground skyscraper, multiple levels. But it says most of the aliens were supposedly on levels 5, 6, and 7, but there were more. There were also more vast network of shuttle connections under the ground than expected, extending into a global network that had not been reported, providing escape routes and entry ports for rapidly deployed additional security forces that had not been expected. Says they were not ready for what they found in level 6. Reports spoke of multi-armed and multi-legged humans in cages and vats, humanoid-like creatures as tall as 7 feet. Says the aliens had learned a great deal about genetics, both useful and frightening, and most of it had been learned at the cost of human suffering and lives. Captain Leather's flight reached level 7 first, blowing the main hub entrance open and neutralizing the security force with extreme prejudice in less than 45 seconds. On entering the security station, they realized the extent of the facility for the first time. What they did, they came into the control room, and it was like a studio with multiple monitors. They actually had 62 different monitors, and they were almost a holographic monitor. But what it was where the security forces had cameras all through this underground base. And it said they what they saw was they had the facility for watching and controlling over 30,000 captives on that one level alone, and the control and security systems for moving the captives to testing facilities and pleasure centers in over 62 different locations, where another 4,600 captives were currently being kept. It says Captain Leathers looked into the images of scenes of horror that are impossible to express in words, a zoo of human beings in various states of health and mental condition, images of young women being tortured at that very moment. He said all he could think of was his own daughters. Then he said he collected his wits and gave the order to move forward to release as many of the victims as we could. Now, they had originally planned to do a smash and grab on this deal, but it said once they realized the extent of the facility and the number of people there, that Captain Richards was given permission to extend the operation longer, even though it would become more and more dangerous as troops were being brought in through the shuttle tubes. It says it wasn't like we had choices. We couldn't leave the girls behind alive. We knew that any that we didn't evacuate were going to have to terminate. Our problem was simply numbers. Thousands of aliens trying to kill us, thousands of human females screaming for help, thousands more far gone, so far gone that we knew we would have to leave them behind. Thousands of enemy troops starting to arrive on the subway trains. We were not set up for a mass evacuation. It says that they realized that the sub-tube back to New York and one to Mexico seemed to still be open. So they started loading girls into the tube trains and shooting them off as soon as we knew our forces were in control of the stations at the other end. I guess through radio communications. It says we blew 2 air shafts wide open so 2 squads could get girls out that way into the fresh air where hopefully our people could pick them up. It says Cat 4 took a beating as they fought to keep reinforcements from entering the main sub-tube stations. There's no doubt that in his mind he said that we stayed in the facility too long, but at the time it was very hard to leave these poor women behind. You knew that everyone you failed to send out in front of you was going to die, and soon. It said exactly 1 hour after the X-22 had first attacked the main port entry, they were given the orders for a full recall. Now, they had 2 astronauts with them, and obviously they had taken some of these alien craft and did a reverse engineering as they captured them, shot them down, or were given the technology, whatever. But it says David Griggs and R.E. McNair had by then managed to get 2 alien craft airborne, 1 disc craft and one of the highly advanced triangle fighter craft. It said now at this point they were running for Area 51 when they escaped here. It said they also managed to get a huge disc shuttle moving in which over 3,600 human females had been loaded and were now being taken to a safe base. It said the human attack teams were now withdrawing behind walls of smoke and set explosions. One of the frightening bits of equipment that one of the teams had found but had been forced to leave behind was a type of cell electrostatic disruption device called a CED. It's a weapon that could be set to disrupt the cells of a living creature at a subatomic level, thus killing everything living in an area while not doing much harm to any structure or equipment. To make sure that there would be no survivors left in the facility, the device was set by the MAT technicians to go off shortly after the full withdrawal of the attack teams. It says Lieutenant Colonel E.S. Onizuki, who had led the filter attack team, managed to repair the X-22's battle damage enough to get it off the ground. He said then he took command of a captured alien Triangle fighter craft also. As the wounded Richards fought a running retreat with the last of the rescued females and the survivors of Cat 4, Cat 3, Onizuki provided cover from the alien fighter craft. Were coming in from the transport tubes and the different water supply vents, air vents, things like that, as the main control room was taken over. Now, where we left off, it was Richards was seeing that the landing disc that he had followed in, and if you remember, it was Captain Mark Richards that had led the attack with the experimental X-22 helicopter. 5 miles behind him were the helicopters that were bringing in the troops and the backups. Now, as they were attacking the entrance, as the UFO came in, or the alien disc came in, they knew the timing and they had been tipped off about it. They came in, flew right in with the disc almost on top of it, and started firing. At the same time, troops was trying to escape. Richards landed on the edge and kicked the props of the X-22 into a full downdraft, nearly flipping the disc. Then, fighting to regain control of the X-22, he was forced to make a hard landing on a nearby pad, sending 4 more rockets into May the 11th, 2013. In Part 4, we ended as the attack began on the Dulce base.